In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Adorable Will, I want to pray these titles, but I am unable to do it. Come and do it with me, and I'll do everything well.
Jesus in Mary, I honor you, and I cherish you, one with Louisa, who is wherever the divine will is, and her acts are in every place the divine will is. Louisa, the soul that puts herself in the order of creation. Louisa, the soul in communication with all created things through the electricity of the supreme will. Louisa, the soul who is sustained by all the works of her Creator. Louisa, the soul who everyone recognizes, loves, and offers the electricity, the secret, to live together with them, suspended between heaven and earth. Louisa, who Jesus called into his will, so that she may associate herself with Jesus and the celestial Mama, and follow and repeat their acts. Louisa, who Jesus dwells within. Louisa, who Jesus is hidden within. Louisa, one who is in the center of Jesus' humanity, and everything Jesus did and suffered is all around her. Louisa, one who takes all the fruits of everything Jesus did and suffered, and enters the order of creation. Louisa, one in who the divine will fulfills the purpose for which she was created. Louisa, one who Jesus never leaves, but penetrates more deeply into, and remains silent in the little ship of her soul. Louisa, one who maintains whole the bonds of creation that exists between creator and creature. Louisa, one who maintains whole the bonds of redemption. Louisa, one who maintains whole the bonds between the sanctifier and the ones who are being sanctified. Louisa, whose heart is bound with many threads of light. Louisa, Jesus' daughter, daughter of his supreme volition, who the divine will wants to take part in everything. Louisa, who makes Jesus' goods no longer be suspended. Louisa, through her, through the divine will given to her, the divine Fiat will return to live upon earth. Louisa, whose dead human will, together with the Queen Mama's, will be the ransom for many rebellious wills. Louisa, whose dead human will, together with the Queen Mama's, will repay the triune God for all the evils of other creatures. Louisa, one who implores salvation and graces for the future generations. Louisa, one who repeats together with Jesus that which he contains. Louisa, one who is strong in doing good. Louisa, one who is soaked with love for her God. Louisa, from who heaven awaits the requital of the kiss Jesus gave to her. Louisa, the soul whose operating is like a silvery sound of a vibrant and shrill bell calling the attention of all. Louisa, little daughter of Jesus' will, who feels sorrow and impetrates forgiveness together with Jesus. Louisa, who Jesus comes to suffer within, and her with him, the pains of his passion. Louisa, in who Jesus can repeat the pains of his passion in act. Louisa, one who possesses the one single act of creation, redemption, and sanctification, and takes part in the pains of Jesus' passion as though in act. Louisa, one who in forming one single act with her God, creates together with him, flowing in one single act in all created things, and forms the glory of creation for her Creator. Louisa, one whose love shines over all created things, and enjoys and takes pleasure in them. Louisa, one who loves all created things as things belonging to herself and to her God. Louisa, one who in possessing the one single act has a note that echoes the whole of the divine operating. Louisa, one who in possessing the one single act finds the redemption in act and makes it all her own. Louisa, one who in the one single act suffers Jesus' pains as if they were her own. Louisa, one who in the one single act flows in everything Jesus did. Jesus and Mary, I cherish you and I love you, one with Louisa, one who in the one single act has a note of reparation, compassion, love, and of substitution for Jesus' life. Louisa, who, in the one single act, finds everything, makes everything her own, and places her requital of love everywhere. Louisa, like solar ray, bound to the single act she diffuses everywhere and in every one. Louisa, poor daughter. Louisa, whose pain ran wherever the divine will was, on earth, in heaven, within the saints and the angels. Louisa, the soul whose pains are the cross of all. Louisa, the soul whose pains satisfy for everyone. Louisa, the soul whose pains convert the fury of the divine justice into celestial dew. Louisa, the soul whose pains satisfy for everything. Louisa, the soul whose pains convert the fury of divine justice into celestial dew. Louisa, who comes before the supreme majesty to reorder all human wills in the will of their creator. Louisa, who repairs with Jesus' own will all the acts of the wills of creatures opposed to his. Louisa, who brings all acts before the supreme majesty to requite them with her will together with Jesus's. Louisa, whose duty is to give Jesus back the rights of his will as the prime act that he did toward man. Louisa, who has a special mission about Jesus' will. Louisa, the Celestial Father's little daughter. Louisa, Jesus' daughter, who he has called as the head of a special mission more than a new Adam. Louisa, who must enclose within herself all the seeds which Jesus' will contains. Louisa, who Jesus chose as the center of the sun of his will. Louisa, who will imprint the image of Jesus' will on all the acts of creatures. Louisa, whose field is vast. Louisa, daughter of Jesus' holy will. Louisa, true daughter of Jesus' will. Louisa, how rich she is. Louisa, who receives the union of the supreme will with hers. Louisa, who Jesus feeds on the food of the divine will's knowledges. Louisa, the soul who receives the divine will as her own, who possesses it. Louisa, the soul who feels the divine will's celestial aura, its life of heaven, the likeness of the one who created her. Louisa, the soul who feels studded with the reflections of her creator. Louisa, the soul who feels the power of the Fiat in everything. Louisa, in the depth of her soul, Jesus must find everything in everyone. Louisa, bound to and in possession of all that Jesus' will has done and will do. Louisa, in whose soul Jesus finds the starry heavens, the refulgent sun, the vastness of the seas, the prairies of the flowers, everything. Louisa, in who Jesus must find Adam innocent and Adam guilty, that she may bind herself to him in the state of sanctity. Louisa, in who Jesus must find the prophets, the patriarchs, the holy fathers, with all their acts. Louisa, in who Jesus must find his inseparable Mama, and all her acts, in himself and all his acts. Louisa, who is inseparable from all things that are inseparable from Jesus. Louisa, who will reorder the new heaven of man and will make it shine with new light. Jesus and Mary, I love you, and glory to my Creator, one with Louisa, daughter of Jesus' will. Louisa, who rises to the state of Adam innocent before falling into sin. Louisa, who takes her place of honor and sovereignty in the creation. Louisa, the soul who unites her act to the single act of her Creator and takes her place within the atmosphere of the eternal light. Louisa, the soul who lives the divine life. Louisa, the soul who the celestial Creator takes in his arms, places her on his lap, and lets her operate with his very hands, and with the power of that fiat with which all things were made. Louisa, the soul who the celestial Creator lets his reflections descend upon in order to give her the likeness of his operating. Louisa, whose operating becomes light. Louisa, whose operating unites to the single act of her Creator and constitutes itself eternal glory and continuous praise of her Creator. Louisa, the creature who places the final point on the work of Jesus' will. Louisa, the creature who takes all created things as the fulfillment of Jesus' will. Louisa, one who gives the final step to the way of Jesus' will. Louisa, one who gives the final step to the final act of the supreme volition. Louisa, one who eats the bread, who eats the divine will in it. Louisa, daughter of Jesus' supreme volition. Louisa, whose isolation serves as company for Jesus' will. Louisa, true faithful daughter of Jesus' will. Louisa, little newborn of the divine will, just newly born. Louisa, one who contains as life the life of the divine will. Louisa, who the divine will makes rise again in every instant to new life, new beauty, grace, and happiness. Louisa, who the divine will has as great with itself, little but strong, little but beautiful, just newly born, who has everything divine. Louisa, whose life is divine will alone, which carries out all of Jesus' designs. Louisa, like the drop of water submerged within the great sea. Louisa, like the grain of wheat amidst the great masses of grains. Louisa, the first to take the fruit of the Fiat voluntas tua, on earth as it is in heaven. Louisa, who the destiny of the world weighs upon. Louisa, in who Jesus' real life is repeated on earth. Louisa, in who the divine life suffers, prays, repairs, and transmutes Jesus' very will into. Louisa, in whose I love you, Jesus hears the echo of his over all created things. Louisa, from who Jesus feels the requital of love of the creature for everything he has done. Louisa, whose soul is raised above everything, and she can love all things with God's very love. Louisa, constituted possessor and queen of all creation. Louisa, the divine will's first little field. Louisa, whose motions are divine wounds for Jesus. Louisa, who Jesus called as the first and as the head of the mission of his will. Louisa, in who Jesus laid the balance between her and the Creator, removing the distance between the human will and the divine. Louisa, in who Jesus formed the divine root, trunk, branches, flowers, and fruits. Louisa, in who the chosen people of the Fiat voluntas tua, on earth as it is in heaven, comes out from, and from the mission entrusted to her. Jesus and Mary, I glorify you and I praise you, one with Louisa, daughter of Jesus' volition. Louisa, whose motion moves heaven and earth and connects everything together. Louisa, in who all feel the power of the divine will operating. Louisa, in who all recognize her nobility, the likeness, the offspring of their Creator. Louisa, daughter of the celestial family, who all protect, assist, defend, and long to have with them in the celestial fatherland. Louisa, the little newborn of Jesus' supreme volition. Louisa, who takes part in the beatitudes, joys, and happinesses of the one who delivered her to the light. Louisa, who all of heaven is grateful to. Louisa, Jesus' daughter, little newborn of his will. Louisa, born in the divine will, who can also be mother. Louisa, in who there is the seed of fecundity. Louisa, in who there is fully sufficient matter of the manifestations Jesus made to her on his will. Louisa, whose continuous acts in the divine will are abundant nourishment to first form the children of heaven within herself. Louisa, who delivers the children of heaven as triumph, honor, glory, and crown of Jesus' will, and as perennial joy of the mother who delivered them. Louisa, who walks inside the water of the sea of the divine will, formed by her many acts, done in it. Louisa, little newborn of Jesus' most holy will. Louisa, Jesus' little newborn of his will. Louisa, the divine being's little newborn of their will, who unites with the single act of the Eternal One. Louisa, reborn continuously to new beauty, new sanctity, new light, to new likeness of her Creator. Louisa, who the divinity clasps to the divine bosom, filling her with joy, infinite graces, and manifests more knowledges to her, making her reborn again in their will. Louisa, Jesus' little newborn with a beautiful destiny. Louisa, Jesus' little newborn of his will. Louisa, who Jesus surrounds with so much grace, so she will always be reborn in his will, and his will shall be reborn in her. Louisa, born in Jesus' will, and who knows the secrets it contains. Louisa, one who is stripped of the garments of the old guilty Adam, and clothed anew with the garments of the new and holy Adam. Louisa, one whose garment is the light of the Supreme Will itself, through which all its divine manners are communicated to her. Louisa, one whose garment of light restores in her the physiognomy of her Creator. Louisa, who has the power of the Fiat to communicate the truths to whoever has the fortune of listening to her. Louisa, who brings the earth to heaven to give in the name of all, together with the celestial court, that glory that will never end. Louisa, possessor of the divine will, who is in communication with heaven. Louisa, the soul who takes part in everything they do in the celestial regions. Louisa, the soul who is as though in act, together with the celestial blessed. Louisa, of who Jesus wants to make a copy of his celestial Mama. Louisa, in who the divine will had its first field of action. Louisa, through who Jesus will make the sun of divine will rise again. Louisa, who the divine being wants to play a risky game with. Louisa, whose little flame of her will, together with the celestial queens, will be seen at the foot of the supreme throne for all eternity. Louisa, whose little flame of her human will obtain the fulfillment of God's will. Jesus and Mary, I praise you, and I thank you, one with Louisa, who has won Jesus' will. Louisa, who's operating in the divine will, partakes in the ways of the divine operating. Louisa, all is hers. Louisa, one who has won the divine will, all creation, and God himself. Louisa, who by right of justice possesses all the divine will possesses. Louisa, who has speech in all created things. Louisa, the voice of the heavens. Louisa, the voice of each star. Louisa, the voice of the sun. Louisa, the voice of the wind. Louisa, the voice of the thunder. Louisa, the voice of the sea. Louisa, the voice of plants. Louisa, the voice of mountains, of everything. Louisa, Jesus' little newborn, who renders the whole creation speaking. Louisa, whose mission is great, the life of the divine will carried out in her. Louisa, the newborn of Jesus' will. Louisa, one who is newly born in Jesus' will, who forms seas of grace while being in exile. Louisa, who must be the copy of her celestial Mama. Louisa, who Jesus chose for the longed for Fiat. Louisa, in who the life of the divine will, with its power, repressed the inclination to sin. Louisa, in who the supreme will formed the center of the carrying out of its divine life. Louisa, in who the divine will is placed in safety in the midst of creatures. Louisa, in who the divine will reigns and finds Jesus' crafting and his incessant prayers. Louisa, in who the divine will reigns and finds the throne of Jesus' works and his pains on which the divine will dominates and forms its dwelling. Louisa, in who the divine will reigns and finds the light of its knowledges, so that it finds in her its honors and its very divine glory. Louisa, who centralizes the goods of all around Jesus. Louisa, who contains everything and in who Jesus finds everything. Louisa, who Jesus called to a greater mission. Louisa, in who Jesus prepared the place to put his fiat and the sublime lessons that pertain to his will. Louisa, who Jesus called and chose for the longed for fiat. Louisa, more fortunate than Jesus' beloved Mama, because she has a celestial Mama, and all her works as helps. Louisa, who has a divine strength at her disposal. Louisa, who possesses a divine beauty. Louisa, everything Jesus created is hers. Louisa, to whom Jesus makes known everything that belongs to the divine will. Louisa, in whom the divine will wants to centralize all its goods. Louisa, everything that is God's and what the divine will rules, preserves, and dominates is hers. Jesus and Mary, I thank you and I esteem you. One with Louisa, the soul where the continuous act of Jesus is never interrupted. Louisa, with who Jesus can do freely whatever he wants. Louisa, the little wind that forms the waves in the divine sea. Louisa, the soul who the divine will rises over. Louisa, the soul who the divine will vivifies. Louisa, the soul who the divine will bejewels with graces. Louisa, the soul who the divine will gives the most beautiful shades of divine colors. Louisa, the soul who the divine will transforms in God. Louisa, the soul who holds supremacy over everything. Louisa, the soul who occupies the first place of honor in the whole creation. Louisa, the soul who never moves away from the point in which God delivered her. Louisa, the soul who God always finds on his paternal knees, singing to him his glory, love, and eternal will.
You have reached the end of day 14 of the titles of Louisa. Fiat.